Three black SUVs turned the corner on Westheimer Road and stopped in a perfect line outside the restaurant. The engines idled. The windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. The front door of the lead SUV opened. A man stepped out, 30 years old, tailored charcoal suit, polished shoes that caught the Houston sun. He buttoned his jacket with one hand and looked up at the restaurant sign above the entrance. He didn't rush. Men like him never rush. Inside, a 74-year-old woman sat alone at a corner table. Her plate was gone. Her food was in the trash can behind the bar. Her hands were folded in her lap. She wasn't crying anymore. She had already given this place enough of her tears. The man walked through the front door. The glass swung open and the noise of Westheimer traffic flooded in for a moment and then went quiet again. Every head in the restaurant turned. The woman behind the hostess stand looked up and felt something cold run down her spine. Because the man wasn't looking around the room. He was looking directly at her. If you've ever watched someone cruel get exactly what they deserve, stay with me. Hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because what this man is about to do in this restaurant will leave you speechless. 2 hours earlier, the corner table was empty. The restaurant was half full. The lunch rush was building. And a small old woman in a faded green dress stepped through the front door carrying nothing but a worn leather handbag and a quiet hunger. Her name was Serwa Mensah, 74 years old, small, 5'2", thin frame, skin like dark mahogany polished by 7 decades of sun and wind and grace, white hair cropped close to her head, deep brown eyes that had seen more of the world than most people could imagine. She wore a simple green cotton dress, flat brown sandals, and no jewelry except a thin gold wedding band on her left hand. She moved slowly, not from weakness, from patience, from the kind of stillness that only comes from knowing exactly who you are. She had been walking through the Galleria area looking for a gift for her great-granddaughter. The Houston heat had tired her. She smelled food, something warm and rich drifting through an open door. She followed the smell to a restaurant called Maison on Westheimer, upscale, trendy, and the kind of place with cloth napkins and small portions and prices that would make your grandmother faint. Serwa didn't know any of that. She just knew it smelled good, and she was hungry. She walked to the hostess stand and waited. Crystal Manning was behind the stand, 34 years old, restaurant manager, blonde highlights, tight smile. She was typing something on the reservation tablet when she sensed someone standing in front of her. She looked up. She saw an old woman in a faded dress and flat sandals. Her smile disappeared. "Can I help you?" "Yes. I would like a table, please. Just for one." Serwa's voice was soft. Her accent was thick. Ghanaian. The kind of accent that makes certain Americans speak slowly, as if the person in front of them doesn't understand English. Serwa understood English perfectly. She understood 4 languages perfectly, but Crystal didn't ask about that. "Do you have a reservation?" "No. I was just passing by. The food smelled wonderful." Crystal looked her up and down. The faded dress, the flat sandals, the worn handbag. She made a calculation in 3 seconds. This woman would order the cheapest thing on the menu, sit for an hour, and take up a table that could generate a $100 check from someone who actually belonged here. "We're fully booked for lunch," Crystal said. Serwa looked around the restaurant. Half the tables were empty. It looks like there are many open tables." "Those are reserved." A man at the bar overheard the exchange. He caught Crystal's eye and shook his head slightly. They both knew it was a lie. Crystal didn't care. "I'm sorry," Crystal said. "Not sorry at all." "You might try the food court in the mall. It's just down the street." The food court. She might as well have said, "Go eat where people like you eat." Serwa didn't flinch. She stood at the hostess stand for a moment. Then she said, I'll wait, in case something opens up." She sat on the small bench by the entrance. She folded her hands in her lap. She waited. Some battles aren't fought with fists. Some battles are fought by refusing to leave. And the woman on that bench had been fighting battles like this for longer than Crystal Manning had been alive. 15 minutes passed. A couple finished their meal and left. A table opened up. Crystal saw it. She seated a man who walked in after Serwa, and he was wearing a sport coat and loafers. He didn't have a reservation either. Serwa watched. She said nothing. 10 more minutes. Another table opened. Crystal seated a young couple in workout clothes. No reservation. They were white. They were young. They looked like they spent money. Serwa watched. She said nothing. 20 more minutes. Serwa had been sitting on that bench for 45 minutes. A waitress named Jasmine Torres walked past. 26. Kind face. Hard-working. She had been watching from across the room. She stopped. "Ma'am, are you waiting for a table?" "Yes. The manager said they were fully booked, but I see people being seated." Jasmine looked at Crystal behind the stand, then back at Serwa. Her jaw tightened. "Hold on. Let me get you a table." Jasmine walked to the back section of the restaurant where 2 empty tables sat untouched. She pulled out a chair and came back. "Follow me, ma'am. I have a table for you." Serwa stood. She followed Jasmine to the back corner. The table was near the kitchen door. It was the worst table in the restaurant, but it was a table, and Serwa sat down like it was a throne. "Thank you, dear." "You're welcome. My name is Jasmine. I'll be taking care of you." Crystal appeared beside them within 30 seconds. Her face was tight. "Jasmine, a word." They stepped away. Crystal's whisper was sharp enough to cut glass. "I told her we were booked." "Crystal, half the restaurant is empty." "That's not the point. She doesn't fit the clientele. Look at her. She's going to order a cup of soup and sit here for 2 hours. She's an old woman who's hungry. She's not our customer, and you don't seat people without going through me." "Then what was I supposed to do? Let her sit on that bench until closing?" Crystal's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, Jasmine. You're replaceable." She walked away. Jasmine stood there for a moment, and hands balled into fists at her sides. Then she took a breath, picked up a menu, and brought it to Serwa's table. "Here you go, ma'am. Take your time." Serwa opened the menu. She studied it carefully. She ran her finger down the page the way someone reads when they are genuinely interested. She stopped at 3 items. "I'll have the braised lamb and the roasted vegetables, and a glass of water, please." Jasmine paused. The braised lamb was $46, and the roasted vegetables were $18. This was not a cup of soup. "Yes, ma'am. Coming right up." The food arrived. Serwa closed her eyes and smelled it. She picked up her fork. She took the first bite. And she smiled. A real smile. The kind that starts in the chest and moves upward until it reaches the eyes. The food reminded her of something. Of a kitchen somewhere far away and long ago. Of hands that used to cook for her when she was small. She ate slowly. She enjoyed every bite. She was halfway through the lamb when Crystal came back. If you're watching this right now and your blood is already starting to heat up, drop a comment. Tell me what you would do if you were sitting in that restaurant watching this happen. And if you haven't hit that like button yet, do it now. Because what Crystal does next is going to make you want to reach through the screen. Crystal walked to Serwa's table. She wasn't alone. Behind her was a busboy named Tyler, 19, nervous, on just following orders. "Ma'am, I'm going to need this table back." Serwa looked up from her food. "I'm sorry? We have a party coming in. I need this table. You'll have to leave." "But I'm still eating." "I understand, but we need the space. I can have your food boxed up." Serwa looked around the restaurant. The back section had 2 other tables. Both were empty. Nobody was coming. There was no party. There are empty tables right there." Those are reserved for the party. I would just like to finish my meal. I won't be much longer." Crystal leaned down. Her voice dropped. The smile was gone. What was underneath was worse than the fake warmth had ever been. "Let me be honest with you. This restaurant has a certain standard, a certain atmosphere. Our regular customers expect a certain experience when they walk through that door. You are not part of that experience. You were not supposed to be seated here in the first place. Now I am asking you nicely. Please leave." Serwa stared at her. 74 years of life, 74 years of building, of being underestimated and overlooked and talked down to by people who couldn't see past her dress and her accent and her age. She had heard this speech before, in different words, in different cities, in different decades. It always sounded the same. "You don't belong here." I would like to finish my food," Serwa said quietly. Crystal straightened up. She looked at the plate. Half-eaten lamb, roasted vegetables, a glass of water. She picked up the plate. Serwa's hand reached for it. "Please." Crystal pulled the plate away. She turned. She walked to the bar. She tilted the plate over the trash can. The braised lamb slid off. The vegetables tumbled after it. The ceramic plate clanged against the metal rim. She threw an old woman's food in the trash. And the restaurant went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. The kind of quiet where everyone is still chewing and still sipping and still pretending they didn't see what they just saw. But they saw it. Every single person in that room saw it. Jasmine was standing by the kitchen door. Her hand was over her mouth. Her eyes were burning. Tyler the busboy stood frozen with a dish rag in his hand. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And Serwa sat at the corner table. And her hands returned to her lap. Her plate was gone. Her food was in the trash. The glass of water was the only thing left on the table. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She reached into her worn leather handbag. She pulled out a phone. Not a smartphone. A small silver flip phone. The kind nobody carries anymore. She opened it. She pressed one button. Speed dial. It rang twice. "Nana?" The voice on the other end was deep. Alert. "Nana, what's wrong?" "Derek. I'm at a restaurant on Westheimer. I think it's called Maison." "Are you all right? You sound—" "I'm fine, child. But I think you should come. I'm 20 minutes away. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." She closed the phone. She put it back in her handbag. She folded her hands in her lap again. And she waited. Crystal walked past the table and placed the check on the edge without looking at her. The check was for $68, for food that was in the trash. Crystal expected the old woman to argue, to cause a scene, to give her a reason to call security. Serwa opened her handbag. She pulled out a small envelope. She counted out 4 $20 bills. She placed them on top of the check. $80, including tip. For food she didn't finish. Food that was thrown away in front of her face. She left the money on the table and continued to sit. Crystal saw the cash. Something flickered across her face. Surprise. Then irritation. And the old woman was supposed to leave. She had paid. Why was she still sitting? "Ma'am, you've settled your bill. I need the table. I told my grandson I would be here. I'll wait for him. You can wait outside. I'll wait here." Crystal's nostrils flared. But the old woman had paid. She hadn't caused a scene. There was no reason to call security that wouldn't make Crystal look worse than she already did. So she walked away. And Serwa sat, hands folded, waiting. There is an old saying in the part of the world where Serwa was born. They say the lion does not answer the barking dog. The lion waits. The lion is patient. The lion knows that time is the only weapon that never misses. And Serwa Mensa had been a lion her whole life. She just never felt the need to roar. 14 minutes later, 3 black SUVs turned the corner on Westheimer Road. They were identical, matte black, tinted windows. They moved in formation like a military convoy. And they slowed. They stopped in a perfect line directly in front of the restaurant. The engines idled. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, every person in the restaurant could see them. Crystal looked up from the hostess stand. Her eyes narrowed. Then the front door of the lead SUV opened. Derek Mensah, 30 years old, 6'3", built like someone who played college football and never stopped training. Dark skin, clean-shaven, jawline that could cut paper, tailored charcoal suit, and white shirt, no tie, shoes that cost more than Crystal's monthly rent. He buttoned his jacket with one hand and walked toward the entrance. Behind him, 4 more doors opened. 2 men and 2 women stepped out, all in suits, all carrying tablets or leather portfolios. They fell in step behind Derek without a word. Derek pushed through the front door. The glass swung open. The noise of Westheimer traffic rushed in and then went quiet. Every single head in the restaurant turned. Crystal stood behind the hostess stand. Her customer service smile activated automatically. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Maison. Do you have a reservation?" Derek didn't look at her. His eyes were scanning the room. They moved past the bar, past the main dining area, past the window tables. They stopped on the small corner table near the kitchen door, on the old woman in the faded green dress with her hands folded in her lap. His jaw tightened. He walked past Crystal without a word. And he moved through the restaurant with the 4 people behind him following in silence. Heads turned as he passed. People put down their forks. A woman at a window table whispered to her husband. The husband didn't respond. He was watching. Derek reached the corner table. He stopped. He looked at his grandmother. At the empty table. No plate, no food. Just a glass of water and a check with cash on top. "Nana." "Hello. My boy. Where is your food?" Serwa glanced toward the trash can behind the bar. She didn't say a word. She just glanced. But that glance was enough. Derek turned his head slowly toward the trash can, then toward Crystal, who had followed him to the table with her smile fading fast. "You threw her food away," Derek said. It was not a question. Crystal's smile collapsed. "Sir, I don't know what—" "I'm not asking. I see the empty table. I see a paid check for a meal she clearly didn't finish. So I'm telling you what happened. You threw a 74-year-old woman's food in the trash, in front of a full restaurant." "Sir, there was a misunderstanding about the table and—" "Was there?" Derek's voice was flat, quiet, the kind of quiet that is louder than screaming. He unbuttoned his jacket and sat down in the chair across from his grandmother. His team stood behind him. 4 people, silent, watching. Do you know who this woman is?" Derek asked. Crystal shook her head. Her confidence was draining like water from a cracked glass. "This is Serwa Mensah. She is the founder and chairwoman of Mensah Holdings International. She built a company that employs over 6,000 people across 3 continents. She owns 42 commercial properties in the state of Texas alone." Crystal's face went white. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. And one of those 42 properties," Derek continued, his voice perfectly level, "is the building you're standing in right now." The words hit the room like a thunderclap in a library. Crystal's hand went to the hostess stand to steady herself. Her legs were shaking. "This restaurant pays rent to a property management company called Westheimer Place, LLC. That LLC is a subsidiary of Mensah Holdings, my grandmother's company, which means every month, your boss writes a check to the woman whose food you just threw in the trash." Crystal looked at Serwa, the old woman in the faded green dress, the flat sandals, the worn handbag, the thin gold wedding band. She looked at her, and for the first time she didn't see a woman who didn't belong. She saw the woman who owned the ground beneath her feet. Her legs gave out. She grabbed the back of a chair. Her knees buckled and she caught herself before she hit the floor. I didn't know," Crystal whispered. "You didn't need to know," Serwa said. Her voice was steady, clear, not angry, something worse than angry. Disappointed. The way a grandmother is disappointed. The way someone who has lived long enough to expect better from people is disappointed when they deliver exactly what she feared. You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with decency. I was an old woman who walked in hungry and asked for a table. That is all you needed to know. But you looked at my dress, my sandals, my accent, and you decided I was less than the people already sitting in these chairs. Crystal's eyes filled with tears. Not the kind that come from remorse. The kind that come from realizing the ground beneath your feet has just opened up and there is nothing to grab. Ma'am, I am so sorry. You are sorry now because my grandson is wearing a suit and arrived in a convoy. You were not sorry 20 minutes ago when you carried my plate to the trash and poured my food away in front of everyone in this room. Jasmine was standing by the kitchen door, tears running down her face, but she was smiling. The kind of smile that comes from watching justice arrive exactly on time. Derek pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. It rang 3 times. Raymond, it's Derek Mensa, Mensa Holdings. Raymond Voss was the owner of Maison, 58, red-faced. At golf on weekends. He had never met the Mensas in person. He dealt with the property management company. He had no idea his landlord was a 74-year-old woman in a green dress. Derek, yes, hello. What can I do for... I'm sitting in your restaurant right now. Your manager just threw my grandmother's food in the trash because she didn't look wealthy enough to eat here. I need you here in 15 minutes. Silence on the other end. 15 minutes, Raymond. Derek hung up, and he turned to his team. Pull the lease file for this property. I want the termination clause on the table by end of day. One of the women behind him opened her tablet and started typing. Crystal's legs buckled again. She sank into the chair she had been gripping. Please, she said. I have a mortgage. I have bills. I can't lose this job. Please. Serwa looked at her. She looked at her for a long time. And the way a woman who has lived 74 years looks at someone who hasn't learned the most basic lesson of life, that people are not their clothes, that worth is not something you wear, that the woman in the faded dress might be the one who owns the building, or she might be nobody at all, and it shouldn't matter, because both deserve to eat their food in peace. Stand up, Serwa said. Crystal straightened. Her cheeks were wet. Her hands were shaking. What is your name? Crystal. Crystal Manning. Crystal, how old are you? 34. When I was 34, I was sleeping on the floor of a warehouse in Tima. That is in Ghana. I had $11 to my name. I was trying to ship my first container of cocoa butter to a buyer in New Orleans who didn't believe I could deliver. Everyone told me I was too old, too small, too female, and too African to build a business in America. I built it anyway. I didn't build it by deciding who deserved a seat at the table. I built it by giving everyone a seat. She paused. You are not a bad person, Crystal. You are a person who made a bad decision. There is a difference. But that decision tells me something about what you believe. You believe some people belong and some people don't. And as long as you believe that, you will keep throwing plates in the trash. And one day, the plate you throw away will belong to someone who can change your life. Today, that someone was me. The room was completely silent. Every fork was down. Every phone was away. Every set of eyes was on the small old woman at the corner table who spoke like she was delivering a sermon from a pulpit made of pain and patience. Raymond Voss burst through the front door 12 minutes after Derek's call. Red-faced, sweating through his dress shirt, breathing hard. He had broken at least 3 traffic laws getting there. Mr. Mensa, Mrs. Mensa, I am so deeply sorry. I had no idea. You had no idea, Derek said. So, because you built a culture where this is acceptable. Your manager didn't wake up this morning and decide to throw an old woman's food in the trash. She did it because she believed this is what you wanted. She protected your brand, your atmosphere, your clientele. She did your dirty work, and now you're here acting surprised." Raymond's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Crystal. She was sitting in a chair with mascara on her cheeks and terror on her face. Crystal is suspended immediately." "No," Serwa said. Everyone looked at her. "She is not suspended. She is not fired. Not today." Derek frowned. "Nana." Serwa raised one hand, small, thin. But when she raised it, the room obeyed. "If you fire her today, she learns nothing. She goes home angry. She blames me for ruining her life. She becomes more bitter, more afraid, more cruel to the next person who walks in wearing a faded dress." She looked at Crystal. "Instead, she will work. She will keep her job, but she will spend every shift for the next 30 days greeting every person who walks through that door as if they own this building. Because they might." Crystal stared at her, fresh tears falling. But these tears were different. These were the kind that come from being shown mercy by the exact person you wronged. There is no feeling more devastating than undeserved grace. It breaks you in a way punishment never can. Because punishment lets you be the victim. Grace makes you face what you did with nowhere to hide. "And Raymond," Serwa continued, "you will sit with my grandson this week and discuss the terms of your lease. Not because I want to punish you, but because I want to make sure that the next person who walks through your door in flat sandals and a faded dress receives the same plate of braised lamb that the man in the sport coat received. Without a reservation, without a question, and without a second glance." Raymond nodded so fast his chin nearly hit his chest. "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I will personally." "You will not personally do anything. You will train your staff. You will change your culture. You will fix what you built. Because what you built tells people like me that we are not welcome. And people like me built this city." Jasmine stepped forward. She had been standing by the kitchen door for the entire confrontation, crying and smiling and holding herself together with both arms crossed over her chest. "Ma'am, can I get you another plate of the braised lamb? On the house. Please." Serwa looked at her. The first real warmth of the afternoon returned to her face. "What is your name, dear?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Torres." "Jasmine, you are the one who seated me when no one else would." "Yes, ma'am. You risked your job for a stranger." "It wasn't about my job, ma'am. It was about what was right." Serwa reached across the table and took Jasmine's hand. She held it. Two hands. One young, one old. One smooth, one lined with decades. Both strong. "You remind me of myself when I was your age. Brave when it costs something. Kind when it's easier not to be." She looked at Derek. "Write down her name." Derek pulled out his phone and typed. "Jasmine Torres. When you are ready to do something more than serve tables, you call my grandson. Mensa Holdings has a management training program. 12 months, full salary. We look for people who do the right thing when nobody is watching. You did it when everyone was watching. That is even harder." Jasmine's eyes went wide. Her hand trembled in Serwa's grip. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it, and bring me that lamb." Jasmine laughed through her tears. She squeezed the old woman's hand. She went to the kitchen. And the man at the bar who had watched Crystal turn Serwa away at the beginning stood up. He walked to the corner table. He looked at Serwa. "Ma'am, I saw what happened earlier. When she told you there was no table, I should have said something. I didn't. And I'm sorry." Serwa nodded. "You're saying it now. That counts." He went back to his seat. A woman at a window table stood up next. She walked over. "I'm sorry, too. I watched the whole thing." Then another person. Then another. One by one, people stood from their tables and walked to the corner to apologize to the old woman in the faded dress. Crystal watched from behind the hostess stand. Each apology was a mirror. And in that mirror, she could see herself clearly for the first time. Not the version she performed at work. Not the version she posted online. The real one. The one who looked at an old woman and saw a problem to be removed instead of a person to be fed. Jasmine brought the lamb. Fresh. Hot. Perfectly plated. She set it down with both hands. Serwa closed her eyes. She smelled the food. She picked up her fork. She took a bite. And she smiled. Derek sat across from her. His team stood behind him. The convoy idled outside. And every person in that restaurant understood something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. You never know who is sitting at the table you are trying to clear. You never know who is wearing the dress you are judging. And you never know who owns the building you work in, the street you walk on, or the ground beneath your feet. But more than that, more important than any of that, it shouldn't matter. The woman in the faded green dress deserved her plate of lamb whether she owned the building or not, whether the convoy came or not, whether her grandson wore a charcoal suit or drove a city bus. She deserved to eat her food in peace because she was hungry, because she was human, because that is enough. Serwa Mensa could have shut that restaurant down with one phone call. She could have ended Crystal's career with one word. She could have torn the lease in half and watched Raymond scramble while his business collapsed. She had the power to destroy every person in that room who wronged her. But she didn't. Because power is not what you can destroy. Power is what you choose not to. Power is an old woman in a faded dress who owns the building and still says, "Give her another chance." Power is wisdom that has been tested by fire and came out the other side without becoming the fire. And that is the lesson this story leaves at your table tonight. If this story made you feel something real, subscribe. Hit that bell. Because in the next story, the person who walks through the door doesn't offer grace. They offer something else entirely. And when you see what they brought with them, you will understand why some lessons are taught with mercy and some are taught with consequences. Fate and Folktales, where every villain falls, and the humble always rise.